All right, how's it going, everybody? Welcome back to the Nerve Guys podcast, where we discuss movement through the lens of the brain. I'm your host, James, and as always, this week's episode is brought to you by the Neuroband. I'll talk a little bit more about that at the end. Today, and for the next few weeks actually, I'm going to take a break from the questions people have been asking, and we're just going to go into a few anecdotes, just stuff about my life, stories that have happened that might help to shine a light on certain things in training. And if not, hopefully they're going to be slightly entertaining in some way. The first one is fairly personal to me, and it's a bit of a long story, so we might break this up into multiple episodes if it's interesting to people. But I'm going to be talking about the surgeries that I have had on my face. So it's a bit of a weird thing when you're somebody who tries to promote, movement as a natural therapy for things, to then go on and say that you've actually had plastic surgery, like surgery that is purely done to change the image of your own face. Some people find it a little bit hard to understand that, get behind that. So I'm going to talk about it a little bit. I'll talk about, the what, why was it important? And then we'll talk about the kind of surgery itself and the aftermath and kind of how that led me into the world of neuroscience and neurology. So yeah, I think that's all the intro I need to do. Let's try and get into it. So when I was born, I had quite a significant amount more tissue in the left side of my face than the right side of my face. So basically what that looked like: left side of my face, super chubby, super fat. Right side of my face, not at all. It's one of those things, you can absolutely still see it on me. So I have had several surgeries to kind of rectify and minimize it, but it's definitely something that has not gone away. When you look, you can see what's going on. And when you're dealing as a kid with like issues regarding your face, it kind of hits a little bit different than, other kind of physical abnormalities and issues. Doctors tend to take facial deformities a bit more seriously, just because of the knock-on mental health effects that can happen throughout your life. The same is going to be true with other deformities, other abnormalities, birth defects, etc. When people are thinking like giving surgery to children, always super risky and not something you necessarily want to do, a lot of the time you then have to factor that into, well, what do we actually expect this person's life to look like growing up? And that was sort of from birth, that was one kind of concern that doctors had was, all right, well, if we can do something about this and do something about this easily, then we absolutely think that we should. And so from about 3 or 4 years old, I was in and out of hospitals having consultations. They did little probe surgeries where they tried to figure out, what do things look like in there? What can we actually see? What details can we find out whether we can do anything safely? And this was all in the very early 90s, so all of the advanced surgical, keyhole procedures and stuff like that were absolutely not there in the same way as they would be today. And the conclusion that they came to was basically, we don't think we can do anything about this without causing potential damage to the facial nerve itself. So if they were to come in and try and, basically just give me liposuction like you would do other parts of your body, the chances of it actually causing damage to the facial nerve were pretty high. And because of that, they didn't want to perform an operation at that time. The other worry that they had was, as I grow up, this could be a genetic abnormality that means that the brain just thinks that this side of the face should be bigger. It could also be something that's just going to even itself out as I grew up. So I spent most of my life in and out of hospitals, but the conclusion was always, we're not going to touch this until you become an adult. So with that in mind, that meant the tissue, the excess tissue, I was stuck with for my entire childhood, and the concerns that come with that around like the self-esteem, bullying, all of that kind of thing were very well justified. So I pretty much spent my entire childhood being called all kinds of names, being bullied relentlessly by different people, different groups, and as you can expect, that had like large knock-on effects to my own thoughts, opinions of myself, self-esteem, and all of that kind of thing. And I'm kind of telling you all that now because I think it's really important when people think about like, do I want to get surgery to change myself? Sometimes the desire to do that comes from not feeling good on the inside. And if that's the case, actually, there's a very good chance that the surgery itself isn't going to help or isn't going to change very much. We'll talk later about like my experience, but you have to be really clear of, you know, what about you do you not like because of your own internal manifestation of that? Like what thoughts are you producing about yourself because of the way that you see yourself? And then what thoughts are you producing because of the actual external influence that other people are giving you? Causing kind of physical changes to yourself if the outside world is, you know, mocking you, bullying you, threatening you, putting you down in any kind of way, you will probably see that, you know, your mental health when you make a physical change is going to get better in some regard. And that can be with something where, you know, you're thinking about surgery. It also goes the same with, you know, all of these weight loss and body transformation things. A lot of the time you find like, hey, especially with modern marketing, people say, well, if you looked better, then you would feel happier about yourself. And I actually don't think that's true necessarily, especially from my own experiences. I actually think if other people are telling you, specifically telling you, not just like general marketing or stuff like that, if you're actually receiving physical feedback from the world saying, hey, you're too whatever, ugly, fat, deformed, all of these things, in those cases, causing a physical change will change the external environment. Hopefully, that's kind of what we want. If the change goes well and it goes the way that you hoped that it would, then not receiving those negative criticisms actually could reshape your mental health in the same way. The problem is your own self-esteem and your own self kind of pity and self-thoughts about yourself are still going to be in the gutter. And, you know, while that little boost is maybe going to help you, give you the tools to get out of there, it doesn't necessarily mean that you're just going to get pulled right up into feeling great about yourself. So yeah, that's kind of one thing. If people are considering any kind of major physical alteration in their life, whether it's surgery or something they actually have to work for, do consider that if your worry is that nobody's noticing, then when you change yourself, probably still people aren't going to notice. They're not necessarily not noticing you because of the thing that you've latched onto as being your problems. And if they are actually giving you quite a lot of verbal and physical abuse and feedback, then maybe you will get a small amount of benefit from that, but still be prepared that you're probably going to have to do quite a lot of work on yourself as well. So do with that information what you will, but I think it's important to point out just before we go any further. And in essence, once I became an adult, that was pretty much the reason that I decided, you know, I spoke to a lot of people, and in my kind of circles, everybody was gravitating towards more like the kind of hippie attitude of, you know, just love nature and don't go for anything unnatural at all. That was kind of the vibe of all of my social circle and friend groups. And most people would have come back with the argument of like, why you need this? You know, just be you. It's great that you're different. Why can't you just embrace that? And personally, looking back on it, I actually think, you know, yeah, there was some great aspects of it. Um, and most of the time, you know, I'm different in a lot of other ways, and I'm very proud to hold on to all of those things. And people who know me know that I'm not somebody who runs away from an opinion just because other people don't like it. Usually, I'm the one who just stands their ground and says, look, I'll be weird. You guys can go be the same together. I am not letting go of these things. But in this case, it almost felt like the negativity that was coming my way didn't even feel like it had anything to do with me. It just felt like this constant negative comment, and to basically talk about the frequency, if I left my house on any given day, the comments that would come would be, what's wrong with your face? Like constant. What's wrong with your face? Have you been in an accident? Did somebody hit you? Have you been to the dentist? Just always this thing of like, ugh, what happened? And my decision was basically, I just need those comments to go away. What happened to you is nothing about me as a person. It's nothing about my identity. And I didn't find it helpful or self-affirming in any way to be like, yeah, I'm going to embrace dealing with people talking like this to me forever. So that was pretty much what drove me to say, I'm going to go ahead, I'm going to get this surgery, I'm going to actually change and alter my appearance. I guess the next thing is to talk about the surgery itself. So if you're going to go and do something to your face, you can be prepared for quite a significant amount of time of having to go in, have people explain the risks, say, are you sure you really want to do this? And just constantly hear the same things over and over again. And the things that they're going to explain to you, number one, is obviously the risk for like potential scarring and stuff like that. Now with my surgery, apart from a couple of minor things on the outside, they actually went in through the inside of my cheek and face. So I didn't end up with any kind of physical scarring, but they mentioned that, you know, that's going to be a potential thing that you're going to have to deal with is, you know, if you get a scar tissue is for life. It's not going to go away. You know, and if you're going into this for a cosmetic change, then you got to be prepared for, you know, this is going to be a change that other people are still going to notice. I don't know why, but for some reason I just kind of brushed that off. And I kind of brushed off all the advice that people were giving to me. I think the relentless noise of everybody else's reactions to me had just got to the point where it was like, I'll take anything, I'll take whatever gambles. But the other things that they mentioned, number one was potential damage to the trigeminal nerve of the face. So that's the one that deals with all of the sensation. That did happen, by the way, and I'll talk about that a little bit later. And then the other aspect was potential damage to the facial nerve of the face. And damage to the facial nerve is usually a much more serious thing to have to deal with. So the facial nerve is the one that makes your face move. And when you get damage, you will see that the muscles are no longer able to receive any messages, and you end up getting some pretty serious asymmetries in the face. So, you know, essentially one side gets paralyzed. It's what you usually get taught to look for when somebody has a stroke. They usually say, look for one side of the face drooping. That is the facial nerve not sending the signals to the muscles of the face, and you get this really big asymmetry. So that was another big risk. Luckily, didn't actually get any kind of facial nerve damage, or if I did, it's kind of tied up with some of the other physical byproducts of what ended up happening. So yeah, I guess I got pretty lucky with that one, because while I was, still pretty young at the time, so I was like, yeah, just give me anything, I'll deal with the consequences. I very much imagined that dealing with facial nerve damage, given that my issue was I couldn't handle the criticisms and responses from other people, would have been a significant blow to my mental health and well-being. You can work all you want on your self-esteem, but once you've built up quite a big negative spiral like that, it can be very hard to turn the tide back. So when I went in for the actual surgery, my memories of it are, one, took a very long time. They're essentially removing quite a bit of bone with a drill and then scraping away tons of the fat. Something I guess I forgot to mention was, as I grew older, it wasn't just the tissue that was a lot bigger, the bone also actually started to grow out to kind of meet the tissue. So it was almost like the brain had thought this side of the face was supposed to be bigger, and as I got older and older, then the bone would just kind of grow out and kept growing. So they were removing a huge chunk of bone as well as a bunch of the tissue. I woke up just babbling away, as you do if you've had anesthetic. Anyone who hasn't been for surgery, just be prepared. You will tell the truth and all of your truths to all of the people who are around you in the operating theater. They'll start chatting to you, you will start talking back, and you won't remember what you've said. And when I woke up, that was exactly what happened. They started grilling me about how much I loved the TV show Scrubs. Do not remember why I brought that up. Probably because I was a bit scared of not making it through the operation. Woke up, lots and lots of pain in my face. They started giving me morphine, asked me, hey, like, how much out of 10 are you feeling? I just said 10, 10, 10, 10, 10. After a while, they told me, well, we've given you all the morphine we're legally allowed to give you, so you're going to have to just sit with it for a while. And I just kept telling them, it doesn't feel right. Something feels like it's bursting, or like it felt like my whole face was about to explode. And they said, okay, cool, give us a minute, we'll come back with a doctor. Came back with a doctor about 5 minutes later. All I remember him doing was walk up, look at me, and go, Jesus! Turned around, like ran away, comes back, moves right up beside my head and says, okay, James, how's it going? I see that the surgery, blah, 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 blah. Then feel somebody grab my other hand, shove a big, huge needle into like the little butterfly IV. And as they do that, I turn back to the main doctor who's talking to me, and he says, yeah, so had a couple of complications. We're just going to put you back into surgery for a little bit more. And then I woke up with like a little stint thing on the inside of my face. So I guess there was some kind of drainage issues in the on the inside. And after that, the recovery process was really just a whole lot of swelling, whole lot of pain, whole lot of bruising for a few days. I was instructed I had to wear this ice mask for the entire time, which they told me just never take it off. It's going to bring the swelling down, and that's going to be really great. That mask started to burn me after quite a bit of time. So after about a day of just having this mask on all the time, the pain was no longer coming from the inside of my face. The actual sensation of the cold on my face was causing the pain. So I was taking the mask off all the time, wouldn't wear it, got scolded, but what are you going to do? I didn't want to wear it. Did that change my recovery? I don't know. You hear a lot of the time that, inflammation is actually what your body needs to recover. And the negative experience made me feel super justified in taking it off. nobody else who was actually medically trained had the same opinion as me. So who knows which one actually was right, but I probably think that, yeah, maybe I should have kept it on a little bit more. From there, the recovery process, like if you've ever had major surgery on a bone, you'll know that the swelling, the inflammation sticks around for quite a while. So while this was supposed to improve the appearance of my face, it absolutely made it worse for maybe up to 2 years after. So it was a huge amount of time, like I think 2 years, where I was just kind of looking at myself, trying to compare it to before, looking at photos, and just like, this looks exactly the same. And I was still getting the same comments all the time. In the following 2 years, that's when all the comments just exponentially started to drop. And I got to a point where now, pretty much never in real life will I get anyone bring up, what's going on with your face. What happened to you, or the even worse one, which is somebody who knows my history giving me a drunken lecture about, oh, you don't notice it anymore. Oh, no, you really can't see it. And it's like, cool, well, why are you talking about it for so long? But all that just dropped off. I think the only times that it ever comes up now, occasionally YouTube comments, but YouTube comments are what they are. And really small children very occasionally will ask, hey, what's going on? What's this all about? And the results of that, the self-esteem boost or whatever, as I said, didn't necessarily really come. How I felt about myself definitely didn't change very much, and it took quite a lot more working on myself before I ever got to see that shift dramatically. But the external sources of comments that was causing me a lot of stress, anxiety, and just horrible behavioral antics, that dropped just in those second 2 years after the surgery, went to zero. And the boost to my mental health, despite not having raised the internal feeling of myself as a person, was really huge. So that was kind of fun. And then I guess the next bit is to talk about what actually happened to get me into neuroscience and stuff. So while I didn't get any kind of damage with my facial nerve, there was two kind of big standout changes that came as a result of having a huge part of me just taken out and removed. So one was damage to the trigeminal nerve. That's the one that deals with sensation on the face, as well as a ton of other things. But I ended up getting this really weird thing where if I stroke across my left cheek, I would feel as if somebody was, at the same time, a second finger was stroking kind of just above my eyebrow and down into my eye. And every time I would stroke across, I would feel that exact sensation over and over again. Nowadays, after having done my own kind of neuro work on myself, this is really, really reduced. If I'm super stressed, it will absolutely come back. But now when I kind of stroke across, I maybe feel like a bit of a buzz at my eye at best. But even sometimes, like today, I would almost say I don't feel anything at all. So that's kind of cool. What kind of sparked my whole venture into neuroscience was the fact that my surgeons had told me any difference to the sensation in your face, you're going to have 6 months for it to come back. And if it doesn't come back, it's never going to get there. And I kind of just took that to be true. And so when I figured that, I'm getting all this weird sensation stuff happening, that was just something I was going to have to live with. And it was only after meeting some other neuro coaches that were just like, nah, that's not true. Look, try this. And they were able to change how I felt the sensation in real time. So the surgeons were explaining that this is because nerves, if they grow back, they grow by like a millimeter a year. And so it would take such a long time for the nerves to grow back. But then all these neuro coaches were showing me that actually I could change my sensation without anything growing. They could do it in real time. They could make me really stressed and make it way worse, and they could calm me down and do some fun exercises for my face and have this thing change like almost instantaneously. The other thing that I noticed off the back of that was that my physical body from below the neck actually changed as a result of the surgery as well. Or my opinion is it changed as a result of the surgery because, again, most of the surgeons and medical staff that were talking to me would say there's no evidence of any kind of links, but absolutely my ability to rotate to my right and my ability to rotate to my left from the very day I left dramatically altered. And now, I've got pretty good mobility to the right. Leftward mobility, not so great. That's been something that I've kind of worked on quite significantly, but when I let it slide on any occasion, that would lead to tons of other issues like, lower back pain, which I've kind of dealt with chronically since then, and also sometimes things going on with like my hips and feet and stuff. My left side in general tends to get injured much more easily than the right side. And over the years, I've definitely been able to equalize it a lot more, but not completely. There's always certain aspects that are hard to fix, and maybe I'll get there, maybe I won't. But I think that's another important thing about like any big change that you make to yourself. The recovery journey of that is going to be pretty extensive. And sometimes you have to ask yourself, like, what level of recovery am I happy with? Because, at a certain point, the amount of extra effort it takes me to get 1 degree more to the left, maybe I don't need that. Maybe I don't want that. And unless it's really worth fighting for, I'm probably just going to sit happy with what I've got. And then we'll just see where we get to over time. The final thing I guess I'll talk about is, did anything happen that I couldn't fix? So we talked about like potential damage to the facial nerve and stuff, and I actually thought for a long time that I had damaged the facial nerve, specifically because when I tried to move my mouth into like that kind of like pouty shape, if you're watching this rather than listening, you'll be able to see, but if I try to make that kind of pout thing go on, you'll see that like the lips don't move evenly. The left side lifts really nicely. The right side kind of just flattens, and it looks like there's a lot of muscle atrophy all around the upper left side of the lip. However, having looked at it, I actually think that this is not about the facial nerve. It's actually just about, if your face is structured in a certain way and you remove part of the structure, now I've just got tons of this like dead weight on my face. So my cheek has actually just dropped down, and what that means is there's too much weight for the mouth and the lips to move in the way that they used to, and also the muscles that are controlling them are in a completely different space and configuration. So it's actually quite hard for them to pull in the same way that they used to be able to do. That's led to some kind of interesting problems. So if you ever see when I blink, you'll see that my lip twitches at the same time. And that's something that, again, got to improve drastically through working on it. But I eventually kind of discovered the reason for the lip twitch is nothing to do with the lip, and it's nothing to do with the nerves. The reason for the lip twitch is because of the drop in my face. My left bottom eyelid actually is just a little bit lower than it used to sit. And in order for me to be able to blink and actually close my eyes, my cheek, basically, my whole cheek has to lift up to be able to shut that eyelid. When I have good levels of energy, my facial nerve is able to pull and lift everything up a little bit higher, so you don't notice it as much. As I start to get stressed and as I start to get tired, you see that droop just a little bit more, and then you see much bigger twitches in my face. So that's the kind of all the physical stuff out of the way. I think I'm going to leave that one there for today because I've been talking for quite a while. But if people do have questions about the surgery, about the kind of self-esteem aspects, whether it's internally versus the external stuff, I'd be very happy to do another episode. Do let me know if you enjoyed the kind of story context. I've got a few more coming in the next couple of weeks. They will be less depressing, let's say, than this one. They're going to be more about just stupid challenges and ideas that I've had, as opposed to life-changing events. So thank you for watching. If you would like to support the podcast, I would really encourage you to check out the NeuroBand. So this is a vision and balance training tool that I have designed to help improve focus, posture, and coordination. It's basically a mini introduction into the visual and balance systems. So when we train physically, it's really easy to find information about the muscles and the anatomy and, you know, what all of those things do. The visual and vestibular systems, turns out they're way more important. And if we can spend more time understanding just what kind of eye movements, what kind of balance positions can be helpful to us, the more people that know that, the more we can start integrating it into our health and fitness in general. So please check out the NeuroBand. There'll be a link in the description wherever that is. And yeah, I'd really appreciate it. So I'll leave it there. Thank you for watching. Thank you for listening to my story, and we'll see you next week.